Welcome to Jags Drive Time with John Oehser, Brian Sexton, and Kainani Stevens. Jags Drive Time starts right now.
Welcome into Drive Time. I'm Kainani Stevens here with Brian and John, because why not? Let's do it. It's OTA day number 5. We're halfway through. We're getting closer to training camp, getting a little bit more exciting. Obviously, not a ton they do at OTAs, but we did have some new faces there this week, and, you know, we get to talk little special teams today, so some new stuff to go over, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, here's the good part about it, right?
Yeah.
Is that we're only out there once a week.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it used to be, John, we were out there every day, and you're watching the same drills and you start micromanaging it in your mind. And, hey, wait, I saw this footwork that was better. I mean, it just... You don't even use it when you get into training camp at some point. But it is nice to go out and see some of the new guys. You know, see Calvin Ridley running around. Mm-hmm. See Cam Robinson back out there yesterday.
We did.
Yeah, and I think the micro is what you want to avoid in this.
100%.
And you want to look at the macro. And to me, the macro is that if you think back on how Trevor Lawrence looked in the offense this time last year and how the offense looked this time last year in terms of smoothness, it's head and shoulder. You would expect that, but it's good to see. OTAs for a good team should be more reassuring than they are revealing. And I think this one's reassuring.
We don't have Trevor, really, believe it or not, in the script very much today. We're not talking a lot about him, obviously.
Because Trevor's Trevor, and he looks good.
All the time. I was just going to say, the one thing I did notice, to go micro, is just the way he was running the drills, right? Mm-hmm. He was telling everyone, hey, back up, right? I mean, the little things that made it feel like, okay, this is his team. And I noticed that Doug was just standing there with Mike McCoy, and they were watching, they were talking, and he was moving around, doing some of the things that coaches normally would do in an OTA. So maybe you saw that with Peyton Manning in his early years when you were in Indianapolis. But I don't recall a quarterback in Jacksonville ever managing the whole practice like he did with the offense at times yesterday.
Exciting. They start to run themselves. You don't have to direct everything.
What's his offense? I mean,
which is great news.
It's his.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's go over some of the big things because we'll get right into it here today. Our big thing number 1 is that one of the new faces in town, Brandon McManus. They made a kicker change. We, I think, talked about kickers last week, which is kind of funny, but we were able to catch up with some of the coaching staff yesterday and hearing about exactly what went into the decision when they signed McManus.
But getting the opportunity to add Brandon, he had reached out to me, so it was a guy that wanted to play here. I think that just kind of gives you the picture of where the culture's gone. You know, when you have players that are free agents after getting released and say, hey, Coach, I would love to play here. It's just a testament of what Coach Pederson's done, what the overall team, what it's like to be here. So it's a guy that wanted to be here. And then it was an opportunity to get better as a group. I said Riley did a really good job, but this is a guy that gives us a lot more flexibility, not only on kickoffs, to be able to pin them deep and do some different stuff, but it gives us a longer, kickoff line on Sundays.
Touch on what that exactly means for the team coming up. Big thing number 2, the fair catch rule. The NFL always tweaking things. They're making that new fair catch rule. If you do get a fair catch, it now goes out to the 25. Talked to Doug about whether he thought that would have a big effect on how his team plays and deals with kickoffs.
It could be a possibility if it's maybe a bad weather game, if the wind's blowing, rainy, snowy, fourth quarter, and maybe you take an opportunity to take the ball to 25 as opposed to trying to run. There are some strategy things. I don't know if it's going to change a whole lot.
Big thing number 3 is the buy-in. There are a ton of rookies here, as we mentioned, one of the biggest draft classes we've ever seen here in Jacksonville, a lot of undrafted free agents as well. So anybody that wants to make this team is going to have to do it on special teams. And for Heath Farrell, a lot of that is just about the buy-in and whether they want to be part of the special team squad.
I think the buy-in is the biggest. So the guys who come to my office voluntarily on their own, the guys who stay after practice and want to do drill work on, by themselves and ask questions, I think that's the biggest thing. How much is the buy-in? Because a lot of these players haven't played a ton of special teams in college. So getting the opportunity to kind of see what that looks like, and then can it translate to our game?
an all special teams edition pretty much we're going to do here today. I love this. Doesn't come around often, so let's get into it.
No, it's just not.
We don't always talk about the kicker, and usually when you're talking about the kicker, it's a bad thing, but this is not a bad thing necessarily. We got a more veteran presence, and I think that's what Doug and Heath were talking about when we talked to them yesterday, just being able to have that, extra versatility, whether it's distance or, what they have in that, because Riley's leg wasn't as strong as maybe McManus's is. But I know we kind of talked on it last week, but we weren't really sure, because when they make these kicking decisions, it's literally like that.
And I think, John, you wrote this at some point this week. The reality of it is if Brandon McManus hadn't become available to them, you'd still have Riley Pederson.
Yep.
They'd still be looking for solutions, though, right? I mean, we said that it was Riley's job until it wasn't, meaning, he still had to go earn it every day. And, people, I've seen a lot in your column, John, and a lot on social media about, that last kick against the Chargers was just barely in. It wasn't all. I mean,
good kick's a good kick.
It's a good kick, right? Yeah. The truth of it is they saw him on the practice field every day last year, and through this OTA that was open, they saw something they wanted to change. And McManus is an upgrade by any standard, a more veteran kicker, a guy who kicked a 64-yard field goal in Seattle last year. You can't let that pass.
Teams change kickers because they believe they will trust the new kicker more than the old kicker.
Right.
I also thought it was interesting when Doug and Heath were talking yesterday about the distance. There was definitely a distance factor that they didn't feel like they could have Riley try certain kicks that they believe that McManus will be able to kick. I have had people ask me, well, he was a distance kicker, but he played in Denver. His distance has been very good, even not in Denver. To me, this is a no-brainer for this reason. There are certain kickers in the league that you watch them and their coaches trust them anywhere on the field inside X. Riley Pederson had not established himself as that here. He had done a nice job. I think he's earned his way into possibly being that guy in the future. I don't think they felt about him that way yet. They believe they will feel that way about McManus, and to me, that's all the reason that you make that move.
It's exciting to, I think, also have that presence to see how it's going to affect the offense, because when you have, as you mentioned, a guy that you can rely on, maybe you don't go for it on fourth down as much, or you have that flexibility,
There's
right?
a strategy that you are able to employ with a kicker that you trust, where you don't have that guy. You're like, hey, we got to go for it on 4th and 2 here, because this is just outside his range. And this is a guy we mentioned. In all fairness, when you're in the thin air up in Denver, you've seen some historic kicks up there.
Certainly.
But you also get really crappy weather in Denver, later in the year as well.
Yeah.
And this is a guy who succeeded in bad weather, even with the altitude. So he gives you a guy that if you're in Pittsburgh in October and it's raining, or you're in Buffalo, you're not going to be this year, but Buffalo in December and it's snowing, that you've got some confidence in. What I want to talk about is the kickoff thing.
Let's do it.
Right? Because, John, it's felt for years like the league was on its way to getting rid of kickoffs. I mean, it's the most dangerous play in terms of concussions there is, because you got guys with a full head of steam.
Yep.
And they've tried all kinds of things, right? They've tried moving up the where you kick off and where the ball goes, on a touchback. And there's a lot of pushback from players and coaches on this new rule. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I get the sense that a lot of what they've done, John, moving the kickoff up, moving the touchback to the 25, has abated the problem somewhat, right? I mean, it's better than it's been.
It feels like it. I think we are definitely on some sort of slope toward not having kickoffs at some point. I think this is inevitable at some point, that it is a palpable way for the league to show people we care about player safety without ruining the entire game.
Right.
So I think it's a way for them to sort of do something gradually, then eventually eliminate it. And then when people say, well, you don't make the game safe, or say, well, we eliminated kickoffs, and you can still have the sport. It will be interesting to see how they use this, because the rule now is what it's going to eliminate is not so much kicking it through the end zone or kicking into the end zone. It's going to eliminate that high kick where you try to directional kick it to the 4. There was a belief that was sort of causing some injuries as well, in addition to the high impact where 11 guys running full speed at each other. The lob kick, if you will, or
The mortar kick.
Yeah, was more of a punt. What I don't know, and what I don't think teams have a feel for yet, is how often players will actually use that, and then does squib become the alternative, which squib creates weirdness.
Yeah.
Ball takes a hop.
Which creates opportunities for weird injuries, as as opposed to impact injuries, which is what kickoff and onside kicks are.
If you have a guy like Jamal Agnew, and the Jaguars do, you almost can expect you're going to see more of the squib kicks.
Yeah, you would think, or with Agnew,
Kick it out.
they may just kick it out of the end zone.
Yeah.
Or if you've got a guy who can do that.
I mean, who you're kicking to is going to determine as much as the weather or anything else.
Yeah.
And
how
Doug-
you deploy this.
And Doug has said as much as they're going to put him out there and try to do as much as they can, they're not going to fair catch it if they don't have to.
Well, and Doug did say yesterday that he didn't think that this was going to change all that much. So we'll find out.
Right. I mean, at some point, this to me still feels stopgap from the league.
Yeah.
I'm
with you. I think the kickoff at some point will be gone.
Because, again, it's something that they can do without completely ruining the game. The purist will not like it. Andy Reid has come out and said he doesn't like it.
Didn't like this new rule.
Right. So
No one ever likes the change, though, right?
No.
When it's the way we've always done things. And, we see it in baseball right now with the pitch clock. Everybody hates it, but it's made the game so much better. And I'm not saying this will make the game so much better necessarily, but if you're looking at it, if it can prevent injuries, we all remember those really exciting kickoffs where someone scores a touchdown, but how often does that really happen? And how often does it affect where they are in the game? I'm sure it does. And obviously they've found ways to, cater to that. And then there's a lot of strategy involved in that. But if everybody's put on the same playing field with it and it starts at 25 no matter what, then you're all going to have to deal with it at the same time.
Yeah, I think they're not – it seems to me that coaches aren't as concerned about eliminating that one huge exciting play as they are having sort of a I'm looking for the right word, but having every drive after every touchdown start at the same spot.
Right.
Where you sort of feel like you're playing in your backyard where you always got the ball next to the tree.
Yeah.
And you had an all-time quarterback. I think they want to figure out some way to have some sort of skill or play determine field position, and that's hard without the kickoff. But
That's where the squib kick's going to come in.
even without Agnew returning it all the way last year, which he never did, he changed the games at the end of last season,
Field position.
changed momentum, and it feels to coaches like that ought to still be a part of the game because it's been such an important, exciting part. But they got to give something up, I guess.
In searching for the right word, you put it as well as I've heard anyone say, and that is the coaches.
When you work with words.
Yeah, the coaches want there to be a skill, right?
Right.
They want the position of the ball to be related to the skill of the player or the scheme of the coach to get the ball to a certain spot,
Right.
as opposed to that. And that's really what the coaches are going for. So, they've made progress, and you never want to say, well, at least they did something, right? But they had to do something. The concussion issue had become such a major problem for the league and the players that they had to do something. And they've identified it, and they're trying to fix it. Way back in the day, you remember the wedge, right? I mean, they used to line these guys up on the kickoff return, and they were almost holding hands. You know, those front four guys. I can remember Michael Cheever as a wedge buster in 1996, his rookie season in the NFL, and we're in Pittsburgh at Three River Stadium. And he hit Orpheus Roy. You remember Orpheus, the big defensive lineman from Florida State? He hit him so hard. The two collided with such fierce ferocity, right? Fierce ferocity. Because his job was to bust that front four up so that people could get in. Well, Michael Cheever did what's called a dead roach. He was laying on his back, like with his arms straight up in the air. He was knocked out cold,
not
right?
good. Yeah.
It wasn't pretty. And so they got rid of the wedge, and now they moved the kickoffs up to the 35, and they've moved everything around. Well, they're doing something. We'll see whether this one works or not. It's not set in stone.
We should mention, because we talked a little bit about buy-in for these guys trying to make the roster, right, these rookie players. If you take a lot of the special teams out of the game, there's going to be less roster spots for people that, make their money on special teams or make their way onto a team by proving themselves on special teams and then maybe becoming a starter after the fact. So we have to think about that aspect as well.
I also wonder if at some point they won't, I think what the league would like to do, punts are sort of safe compared.
Except for the returner.
What's that?
Except for the returner.
Well, it's still a significantly safer job to return punts than to return kicks the way they used to be set up. So is there some way to have the kickoff be some version of the punt so that the high impact speed and danger isn't quite as much? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, we'll find out.
I'm sure there's someone on the internet that already has figured this out and has some plan of how to do it. But
let's just put it this way. They're not done. This
not.
thing is a work in progress.
And we'll see. I think it's technically a tester rule, so they're going to work on it this year, and we'll see how actually it comes out and everything. But stay with us. Coming up, we're going to hear from the players. We'll hear from that new kicker that's in town. We'll also hear from Calvin Ridley about him working himself back into football shape.
At ViStar Credit Union, you inspire them to go the extra mile to meet your financial needs. That's why they offer Jaguars fans more banking options like better rates and no hidden fees. Their team is also dedicated to making the communities they serve stronger, volunteering their time and talents while donating millions to local nonprofits. ViStar Credit Union, ViStarCU.org. Go Jags!
As the official dentist of the Jacksonville Jaguars, ASAP Dental is a champion of the dental game. Let them win you over with full-service dental care and the same-day smile you deserve. Open 7 days a week, ASAP Dental has 8 locations to serve you in the Northeast Florida area. So come see them today. With their exceptional experience and care, you're always treated as the MVP. Visit asapdentalcare.com or call 904-500-2727 to book your appointment today.
And that's a Magellan first down.
Move the freight! Move the freight! Move the freight! Would you like to control your own income? Work at Magellan Transport. Voted the coolest office space in Duval. Bring your talents and let your career flourish. Visit their website at MagellanLogistics.com and apply online. Trust service. Trust Magellan.
Welcome back. We are doing a Wednesday edition because we had open OTAs yesterday for OTA day number 4. It's OTA day number 5 today. So at the end of the day, we will be halfway through OTAs, which means we'll be that much closer to training camp when everything really starts to get going. Yesterday, we saw a couple new faces. Cam Robinson was actually here last week, I believe, but first we saw of him yesterday. Obviously, that suspension kind of looming. We don't know.
Yeah, what's the story with that? I can't recall there ever being
actual league announcement. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard guys, hey, he's going to be suspended, and then
nothing.
They say, yeah, it's 4 or 5 weeks, and it's done, and then you move on. How is this? You ever recall it where the league is?
Yeah, I mean, I recall situations where suspension is reported. Well, it's been reported that it's happening. The league's never really said anything about it. And I'm assuming that it's being protested and reviewed.
Appealed,
That I have no idea on this because I've not talked to anybody down there for a reason. But I'm assuming the longer it goes that there must be some consideration and whatever appeal there might be or whatever that the league's listening or trying to figure something out and that it's not just, no, it's got to be X. So maybe it's good news for camp.
Yeah.
Might be less severe than we think. Usually because when they're swift and firm with that punishment for the NFL when they think that something's been, something is awry. So
he was moving pretty good yesterday too.
He was.
He was knee surgery.
Absolutely. He was out there moving. One of the other new faces was the new kicker, Brandon McManus. He was cut by the Broncos earlier this week, I think a day earlier, and he made some calls, and Jacksonville was one of the calls he made. He reached out to them to see about whether they would be interested.
I asked for his number and gave him a shout just so he could learn a little bit more about me. I try to talk to all the coordinators in pregame each game, just and been in the league, just honor them and just talk to them that way in case something like this happens. And so I reached out to Heath to learn more about me, just kind of what I bring to the table. And I think it's still above his decision whether I come here or not. But I think we were all able to put it together and get a deal done to come here.
McManus reaching out to special teams coordinator Heath Farrell. We're going to talk a little bit more specifically about McManus' stats and stuff coming up, but I did want to mention he reached out to Jacksonville. I'm sure he called many places, but this is a place that he wanted to come to, and it's becoming a little bit of a spot that veterans and other players are looking at like, hey, I want to go there. They got something good going. That's a good thing.
Coach.
Yeah, Brian, he clarified this a little bit for me.
He did say he reached out to other people, right?
Yeah, and I think he said when I was talking to him that he reached out once he understood that Jacksonville was a possibility. Mm-hmm. Agents pretty much know. X number of teams might. It's a good look for the kicker. If you're an employee, my father always told me he never got a job they didn't ask for.
Yeah.
So
why not?
You say, hey, I want to kick for you guys. Again, to me, I think it's a no-brainer move, and I think it's a very low-risk move.
I think if you're him, you see a coach and a quarterback, right, that are positioned and positioning the franchise well, and obviously those are both in place. And then you think Florida, right, for the obvious weather and no tax state, which is important to these guys who are making big dollars. And then you look at the facilities, right? I mean, you see this brand new facility coming in. It's a place you're going to go to work every day when the Miller Electric Center opens this summer. I've been saying this at Rotary clubs and speaking engagements, but I mean, the golden age of Jaguars football is in front of us. I mean, you see the best of the franchise in the future. Well, if you're a player, what do you want to do? That you want to go to Arizona, where the Cardinals look like the worst roster in football. Yeah. They've got the worst facilities in football, and the ownership is fighting with former employees in very high-profile cases across the. No. I mean, this is a very stable, positive situation for the first time in a long time, and I would think that there are a lot of players at different positions that we'll never hear about, because the Jaguars couldn't play in free agency that way.
Yeah.
That had their agent call and say, hey, any interest in my guy?
Right.
Because Jacksonville is being identified as a place where guys want to go.
And as a kicker, it's got to be exciting to see an offense like is being put together around Trevor Lawrence, because hey, I can kick some extra points instead of trying to kick field goals constantly as he did in Denver last season, which cannot have been fun. We'll have to look up what the numbers were exactly, because I'm sure he kicked a lot of field goals.
Just one more point on this. And I remember walking off the practice field one day last fall, late November, early December, and Brandon Sheriff was talking about how nice it was to practice on a sunny 70-degree day, right? Getting ready for a game. I think it was before Detroit, and he just commented, we didn't have days like this in Washington. No.
Of course
this
not.
is a really good place to live and work.
Yes, except for training camp. That might humble some people.
Yeah, it's like the surface of the sun.
We'll actually see if they can make it through that. They'll be good after that
Yep.
point. Another face, obviously, everyone's been looking at this offseason now that we're back in the stadium, is Calvin Ridley and what he's been able to do with Trevor Lawrence out there. They held him out of some of the open practice they had last week. We saw him held out of some of the drills, and a lot of that, Doug said, was just about kind of easing him back in, because he had the injury, he hasn't played in a while, and Calvin said he felt like he pushes himself too hard sometimes, so he did appreciate that those around him are kind of keeping him on pace.
I mean, yeah, I was at home for a year. I'm juiced up, man. I want to be out there, but like I said, thank God I'm around a bunch of good people, a good program, and they know how to do this. Because you let me do it myself, I'll tire myself out by the time the season's here. So, I got a lot of good people here. I've been working out with, a lot of good, strength staff, and I'm excited about where I'm at right now.
Calvin's ready to run out of his shoes, so it's good that they're kind of keeping that under, he still looks great. It doesn't look like he's being held back, but good that he's not doing too much too fast.
I wouldn't let him practice anymore, Brian.
No.
Just put him in a bubble.
No.
Just put him in a bubble.
What would it do?
And
we'll roll him out the first week.
That, but look, you can see what he is. As soon as the people around him who know these things believe that he is up to speed with Trevor Lawrence and knows the offense, and is at that point where, okay, X number of training camp practices will get him right, I would have him on the field as little as possible, because there's no doubt in my mind he is going to be very good.
100% agree with that, and I have to add that I really like him. I mean, every time he talks, the energy he brings, the vibe, he's cool, he fits in here. I think he's going to be a very good player. I always thought he was going to be a very good player on the field, but I think what he brings to the locker room, that attitude, I think will be even more important. I really like him, and I wouldn't practice him again either. I want him on the field ready to go. He knows what it takes to be ready to go.
Absolutely.
Right? Even though he's anxious to get out there and do more because it's been a long time, Doug Pederson's the perfect coach for him because Doug knows that these offseason practices are not the end-all, be-all. It's about what you get done in August.
Absolutely, and that's good to see as well. So we'll just wrap him up, get him ready for the season. We'll roll him out at that point. I want to touch on the defensive side of the ball. We were able to we touched on a little bit. Obviously, the pass rush is huge. We've mentioned that has always been an issue. Devin Llyod maybe underperformed last year. We said as much when we spoke to him yesterday, and he said he's really focused on making that second-year jump and really defining his role on this team on the defense.
Of course, and I think it's just great going into the same defense with the same group of guys. And, I mean, really, it's nothing but progression already. But I think for me personally, I have a standard that just wasn't set last year. And so, I'm really excited that extra motivation to come out and, prove that this year to myself.
It's always easy to be critical outside looking in. I'm sure he's heard a lot of it, but he seems to be self-aware enough to be like, hey, I didn't do enough for what I expect either. So
maybe I'm too old school on this deal, but there was a time, John, where if you got a good, solid performance from a rookie, you were good about it. That was a guy that you were excited about. Now, I read somewhere where someone, of course, we're all lists in journalism now, right?
Yes.
Here's the most exciting rookies and the most disappointing, and he was in the bust list. Are you kidding me? This is a guy who was uber productive. He was the AP College Football Player of the Year his senior year at Utah. And that's with all the studs at Georgia. He had 8 sacks and 4 interceptions and 2 forced fumbles and 2 touchdowns. The guy's a playmaker. Was he lost last year? Yeah. Lots of guys struggle with the adjustment to the NFL level. I'm telling you, if you think that this guy doesn't think he has something to prove on himself, he does. He absolutely does.
Yes.
But he is a tremendously talented football player. I'm excited to see what he brings to it.
Here's why I think he's going to be okay. When he's around the ball, he attaches to the ball.
Remember the play in Indy?
Yeah.
Last year where there was a ball, maybe he forced the fumble and then he recovered it as well.
He's very instinctive, makes plays when he's around it. If there's anything that you can learn, it's mentally. I didn't say it very well, but I would rather see a guy who is lost as a rookie mentally than who can't handle what's going on physically.
Right.
Because I don't know if you can ever make it up if you can't do it physically. He was a little lost in terms of recognition, in terms of things happening a little bit too fast, because he was seeing things that he had never seen at Utah. He has now seen those things, so it stands to reason he's going to get better against those things. He's got to do it, and he's absolutely crucial because his disruption and playmaking ability, he has the ability to change games. They need him to do that because they don't have enough guys on defense who do that.
Well, and keep in mind, last year you had Mike Caldwell, who was a first-year coordinator, putting in his system with a bunch of other young players on the field. Andre Sisco was getting time as the starter, and Travon Walker was there with his hand on the ground. So, and you brought in a bunch of free agents. So it was a total transition year, and it's not an easy jump to make anyway. But this guy is a first-rate disruptor. And I guarantee you that Mike Caldwell and the defensive staff looked at the tape last year and said, where do we need to move this guy to put him in the best position to succeed? And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of that this year.
Obviously, I wasn't around last season, so I can't speak to their mentality. But Travon as well, we talked to. This is the first offseason they've probably had ever in their lives from football because, you just play all the way straight through. In college, you're starting again very soon. And they actually took a break from football. And I think sometimes just that little bit of, hey, I'm not playing football, get my body right, but also mentally to be like, okay, I can go into this. I've done a year. I'm a professional football player. It's a little bit different than trying to go through the draft and then just immediately thrown into camp. So I think that's a lot of times why we see that second year jump. And they seem to mentally be ready to go from what I've seen so far.
Yeah, they're in good places. I think both of them will be better. And neither of them did anything last year to make you think they can't do it. As Brian said, we're such, one thing I've never quite grasped is how people can watch the league over and over and over again, constantly see players who weren't all that great as rookies be very good pros. except for the running back position and the cornerback position. It's very common, and then still write guys off as busts.
Yeah.
It's one of the dynamics that I guess people just don't see it, but there's no reason in the world to think that those two guys won't be huge impact players this year. They've done nothing to make you think they won't be.
There are players who have gone on to Hall of Fame careers.
Yeah.
That if you looked at what they did as rookies, you'd say, well, they're bust. In today's parlance, right?
Yes.
Because it's all about right here and right now. Draft and develop means draft, be patient, and develop.
Little on-the-job training, yeah.
And if you didn't learn with Trevor Lawrence, right, there were people that were questioning him after his rookie season, and you saw the progress he made. Calm down. Take a deep breath. These guys do need the opportunity to develop.
Who's little calm, little moment. Actually, Devin Llyod did tell me he picked up Pilates, so he's bringing in the flexibility aspect. Maybe everyone else can do a little yoga, have a little meditation, and wait it out. I think they're going to be seeing a very different defense this year. I'm hoping at least it'll be a little bit different. Coming up, we're going to hear from John, Ozone Mailbag. All his wisdom will be shared with you. Stay tuned.
At Five Star Credit Union, you inspire them to go the extra mile to meet your financial needs. That's why they offer Jaguars fans more banking options like better rates and no hidden fees. Their team is also dedicated to making the communities they serve stronger, volunteering their time and talents while donating millions to local nonprofits. Five Star Credit Union, FiveStarCU.org. Go Jags!
And that's a Magellan first down.
Move the freight. Move the freight. Move the freight. Would you like to control your own income? Work at Magellan Transport. Voted the coolest office space in Duval. Bring your talents and let your career flourish. Visit their website at MagellanLogistics.com and apply online. Trust service. Trust Magellan.
Reconnect with the best version of you at Amara Med Spa, Northeast Florida's premier luxury medical spa, located in Ponte Vedra, Town Center, Avondale, St. Augustine, and Fernandina. With the most advanced injectors, estheticians, and technology, Amara Med Spa is redefining beauty, offering services such as Botox and filler, M-Sculpt Neo, painless laser hair removal, and advanced skincare treatments. Visit theamaramedspa.com and book a complimentary consultation today.
Is Ozone friendly.
The Ozone.
Welcome back. We're doing the final drive time for the month of May. And what would it be without an Ozone mailbag? We got to check in with John Oehser and get his thoughts on absolutely everything, because I know everyone writes you and asks you all these very detailed questions. So this week, there is some detail. Lots of kickers this week, kicking questions this week. We're going to start with question number 1. Greg from section 122. He's from Jacksonville, very specific. As an older person, he says, this whole evolving to eliminate the kicking game is beyond ridiculous. It's football. Exactly how is it if a foot never contacts the ball?
Well,
we're getting into a little soccer versus football argument, maybe.
The sentiment here is not wrong, as we discussed and we'll continue to discuss. The game, as they are changing it to make it safer and eliminating kickoffs, I don't think will be as good, and it certainly will be different. Their decision-making here philosophically is, we have to figure out a way to save this game to make it safer.
That's the key word, yeah.
So it's not a want to on these things. They don't, nobody in the NFL sitting here saying, I want to eliminate kickoffs. It's trying to figure out a way to make this game safe for the players, some of whom don't even want these rules. But as we've seen over the course of 50 years of looking at this, the concussions, the CT, all this, sometimes you have to, or the feeling is you have to protect the players from themselves a little bit. That's the responsibility of the stewards of the game, if you will.
Can I go a little deeper?
No.
We're talking about safety, and we're thinking about NFL players because that's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
But this goes down to high school and Pop Warner level as well, because they've seen the number of high school football players diminish in recent years because of the nature of concussions and parents not wanting their kids to get hurt. So they move them to other sports, soccer and things like that. So the reality of it is that if you want this game to continue to thrive and grow, you need kids playing the game, which means the game needs to be safe enough that their parents feel comfortable putting them in the game. And there's all sorts of ways they do that. I coached out in the Junior Development League for years, and that's a heads-up league.
Yeah.
And it's designed to teach kids to take the helmet out of the play. And the reality of it is you've got to find a way to keep the game growing. And it doesn't grow necessarily at this level. It grows at the grassroots level. So safety isn't just for NFL. Safety is for the whole of football, because what they do at this level trickles down to what they do in college, high school, and Pop Warner.
I think a good example we should look at as well is like, you have to change to keep your league relevant. Baseball never changed for a very, very long time, and they lost a lot of, they don't have a lot of youth involvement that goes to that level. A lot of people play youth baseball but don't go to the major league level from America, and there's a lot less, just fans in general following baseball that used to. It's dying out a little bit. So and they're trying to change that now, but I think you really have to get ahead of things, and obviously with all of the injuries that surround football, that's a main focus for them at this point. So it's different, but hopefully headed in the correct direction with them. Question number 2 for you, John, today is going to be Mike from the Azores, writing in far away. Why are the coach and general manager having such a hard time bringing in that much needed veteran pass rusher? Excuse me.
Well, I don't know that they are. I mean, I don't know that they're having trouble with this. I don't know that they're actively looking for it, and I don't know that they feel like it's this much needed spot as much as maybe fans and observers do. Mm-hmm. There are guys out there. I'm sure every day Trent and Doug talk about, the guys who are out there. How do the guys look? How do we feel? Again, this question sort of implied that they're on the phone trying to figure out who to get in. I don't think they're having trouble with it. I think they're just waiting until, A, they believe they want it. B, there is a point with the veterans who are out there where their price will be more palpable to what teams want to pay. And I think they're waiting for that time and to decide if they really want to do this or not. Because as Brian, it's easy to say, well, we have cap space. Well, you have cap space, but anything you spend now affects you in the future, so you still have to be smart with it.
Why rush? There's no reason to do it today, right? I mean, let's get into
guys
camp
are hanging
and,
around. There's a reason they haven't been
see
signed.
See what
maybe.
you've got. I mean, he's done nothing in his first couple of years here, but Calvin Chaison's been all over the field, running around. It looks like there's an awareness that he hasn't had. But let's see what he does, right? Let's see what Yasir Abdullah does. Let's not have trouble, why bring it in when there's not a problem yet? In July and in August, if you have no pass rush, that's a problem. There are guys out there. By the way, are they all signed somewhere else yet?
Nope, they're hanging out.
They're all still there, right? So there's plenty of options. Let's let the problem become trouble and then find the solution then. There's no reason to do it now.
Wait for a fire sale. I like that. Maybe around Labor Day, something like that.
I mean, a great pass rusher, you can plug him in and he'll rush the passer and you'll be fine.
Exactly.
He doesn't need to be here in OTAs. Let's let some of these guys who are here figure themselves out. Let the water find its own level and then go from there.
All right, we'll have to see what they end up doing. Our final question of the day for John is Chris from Fleming Island. Says, any additional insight into why the Jags changed kickers specifically? Anything deeper than they thought McManus was just better? We talked a little bit about this, but go on, please, John.
I knew we'd already discussed this, and this was a good closer for the day. No.
Yeah,
I mean,
nothing.
They thought McManus was better. Look, I like Riley Patterson a lot. I think he's got a chance to be an established kicker in this league. He's not yet. And the biggest thing is, when they called him in, I always kind of watched to see if he would go. There are kickers in the league where you sort of say, you assume they're going to make it. Riley wasn't quite there yet. I think they believe that McManus is closer to that. You know the feeling I'm talking about, Brian?
I do.
Where you just don't worry about the kicker. With Riley, you still kind of watched it to make sure he wasn't quite there yet. They had a chance to bring a guy that they feel is there already. Simple as that, I thought.
How many kickers are there in the league that you would think are absolutely rock solid where they're at? Kickers move. Kickers, I mean, Brian Barker, when he was our punter here in the early years, he talked about how many stops. He did some semi-pro football time, right? These guys need time on task to perfect themselves, and they move around a lot. If you go and look at the trajectory of most kickers, they're here a year, they're 2 years. The Justin Tuckers of the world are rare. You hope to find that guy. And until you do, you move and work. And we had Scobie here for a number of years because he was a really good kicker, right? You want to find that guy that you have that kind of confidence in, and Riley Patterson's not there yet. But he's back to Detroit, and he'll get an opportunity to prove himself again. He may have to move from Detroit to Minnesota to Tampa to L.A. and, finally get a shot in Carolina, whatever. I mean, he'll keep fighting for it. But until then, the Jags can't ride that up and down with a kicker that they watch on the practice field and think he's just not there.
And when you have such a good team and what they're building right now, you don't want to scrimp with the kicker. You want to get the best veteran presence you have and really trust that guy when he goes out there to do his job. Exactly that. So we're going to come right back with us. We'll have a little bit more recap of what we're looking at this week and what's coming up for you. So stay with us.
Hey Jags fans, Brian Sexton for Dreamfinders Homes. In a complex housing market, do decisions on the biggest purchase of your life stress you out? At Dreamfinders Homes, they can build a home of your dreams in one of their many communities in Northeast Florida. With a mortgage company in-house, they're here to assist you throughout the entire process. Choose from their wide range of single-family homes or townhomes from the 300,000s. Dreamfinders Homes specializes in homes built to fit your lifestyle. Call 904-590-2545 or visit dreamfindershomes.com.
At 5-Star Credit Union, you inspire them to go the extra mile to meet your financial needs. That's why they offer Jaguars fans more banking options like better rates and no hidden fees. Their team is also dedicated to making the communities they serve stronger, volunteering their time and talents while donating millions to local nonprofits. 5-Star Credit Union, 5starcu.org. Go Jags!
Honey, are you using the hot water?
No.
The water's cold again. How can we fix it? Did you just quack like a duck?
Yep. Duck Rooter, your plumbing pros in Northeast Florida. For water heater installation and service, including tankless water heaters, gas or electric, call for a quote today.
When you're stuck, call a duck. 904-862-6769.
Move the freight. Magellan Transport voted coolest office space in Jacksonville. Apply online at www.magellanlogistics.com. So as I mentioned, OTAs are about halfway done at the end of today. So I think a lot of focus for us, or at least for me, is Doug seeing everything he needs to see? Is he going to cancel minicamp again? Did you guys kind of get that feeling from Doug as well, as long as everything was in place, that might be an option?
I think he set the expectation level, right? Yeah. In here and in the locker room, for sure. There's an energy out there on those OTAs. I think these guys know that if they get the work done, that most of them will be going home after next week and getting on with their summer. What he did do last year was have the rookies and some young veterans, guys who were at the bottom of the roster fighting for those last spots. He brought them in and gave them a chance to work. I haven't asked him, but I would imagine that that's what he's going to end up doing.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if veterans are here the last week. I think Doug also has the respect and handle on the team where if after 3 weeks he says, you know what, there's X number of things we still need to get done, I'm sure he'd say that in a team meeting and say, look, we got to work on this and this because I don't be ready for this. Yeah. And I'm sure that would be, accepted. I think he has the trust and respect to these players enough to handle it either way. But I'm with you. I would think it would be minimal veteran participation that last week.
The one thing he did say, though, that made me think about it was when he said that it was his job to make sure that they took that next step, right?
Yep.
He said that in his news conference last Monday, that he had to make sure that it was a playoff team and ready to go. So I think his standard is very high. He's not just looking to see, well, are they here and are they energetic and are they, he's making sure that the little details are getting done. But, yeah, as a former player himself and a guy who had to fight for his spot on the roster every year, I think he understands that late July, early August matters.
And a man that loves ice cream parties, he definitely understands that. You put that ahead of people that
they
will deliver.
Do you know anybody that doesn't love an ice cream party?
It's just pure joy. Ice cream party, cancel minicamp is exactly what the players want to hear. But that's pretty much what we got going on this week. We're going to keep an eye on everything for you, and we'll see you guys in June on our next Drive Time. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you soon.